when everything looked great for you from outside, like amazing job, training like an athlete, having healthy habits. But what was really going on behind the scenes with you?
The perception was I was, moving up in my career. I was hitting major milestones. I was training to qualify for the Olympic trials and running. I looked like I was healthy, but on the inside, I was a hot mess.
What was that moment that when it felt like, okay, a change is required, or you realize that you are stuck in patterns and something real change needs to happen?
The catalyst for like the biggest change for me was when I found out I was pregnant with my first son. Like I was crying on the floor thinking, "Oh my gosh, I'm not in the right headspace. I am not prepared for this." I had a history of anorexia and I looked healthy. I like had a healthy weight, but internally I still had very disordered eating, thoughts, insecurities. Like I had a very unhealthy relationship with food and my body still, right? And so I had to start there because I didn't want those habits to impact my child.
So, you of course help people to go from autopilot to awareness. For someone just starting, let's say,
Mhm.
what would be the first real step look like?
The first kind of step is doing nothing other than paying attention, right? And that could be you keep a awareness journal and you start to just notice things about yourself.
What's one common piece of advice that drives you nuts and why it doesn't work?
The biggest one for me.
Hello, beautiful people. How are you all doing? Welcome back to my channel, which is an Inward Strides with Savni. I know the podcast is coming after a long time, almost after a month, but there is a reason why it is. And honestly, a lot of exciting things are going to come in the second half of the year. I am very excited to share with you all. So stay tuned. But today we have a very special guest, and she is Kelly Travis. Kelly is someone who truly gets it. She truly gets it. What's it's like to be a high achiever in this outside world and at the same time struggling inside. She has walked that path, hitting all the milestones, checking all the boxes she can until a major wake up call made her realize that something had to change. Since then, Kelly has dedicated her work to helping high performers break free from burnout, anxiety, and the toxic pressure to always be on. She's not about quick fixes or fluffy wellness advice. She's about real, honest conversations that help smart people like you and me understand why traditional mental health solutions often fall flat. Honestly, her insights are bold, refreshing, and exactly what so many of us needed right now. I welcome Kelly, and I am truly so happy to have her here on this podcast. Let's begin. Hi, Kelly. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. What are you grateful for today?
Oh, I'm grateful that it's Friday. It's been a very busy week. I have two young boys and we've had a lot of activities. So I'm just grateful for a little bit of time with them that's not structured so much. So, yeah.
Nice.
How about you?
It's going great. I'm super excited for today's podcast, and I'm truly grateful that you chose to be the guest and looking forward to it.
Me too. Me too. Thank you for having me.
So, let's go back to the time when everything looked great for you from outside, like amazing job, training like an athlete, having healthy habits. But what was really going on behind the scenes with you?
Yeah. I I like to say that I looked like I had it all together, right? The perception was I was, moving up in my career. I was hitting major milestones. I was training to qualify for the Olympic trials and running. I looked like I was healthy, but on the inside, I was a hot mess, right? Just emotionally drained, very insecure, trying to prove my worth through hustle and controlling like everything. and really wanted people to think that I did have it all together. And I think I had convinced myself too that this was just like how it was supposed to be, supposed to be hard.
So, what was that moment that when it felt like, okay, a change is required, or you realize that you are stuck in patterns and something real change needs to happen?
Yeah. I feel like there have been several moments, right? We don't just have one, but the catalyst for like the biggest change for me was when I found out I was pregnant with my first son. And I call it my bathroom floor moment. Like I was crying on the floor thinking, "Oh my gosh, I'm not in the right headspace. I am not prepared for this and I can barely take care of myself. How am I going to take care of somebody else?" And it really was the driver for me to take a look at, pull the lens out and really look at what's going on, where do I need to make some improvements? And that was kind of the beginning of that growth and change for me.
Wow, the real change. So,
Yeah.
what does the real change mean to you now after that night, like when you found out you were pregnant?
Yeah, if I look back, I think she had no idea how much work she was going to have to do. And if I did know that, I don't know, maybe I wouldn't have taken it on. But here's the thing, and I talk about this a lot with my clients is once we do one thing, because we don't change everything at once, right? For me, it was I had a history of anorexia and I looked healthy. I like had a healthy weight, but internally I still had very disordered eating thoughts, insecurities. Like I had a very unhealthy relationship with food and my body still, right? And so I had to start there because I didn't want those habits to impact my child. But like I was saying, once you work on one thing and and make progress, then you're like, oh, I have to work on this thing now, right? And so that's kind of what happened. And really, through the process, I started to learn, the habits and behaviors that were holding me back, the thoughts I was having that were impacting, my beliefs about myself and the world and how I needed to show up in it and all of those things.
So, is it safe to say that awareness is what made the change possible for you?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I work off of a continuum in my work where we're somewhere along this line, right? From autopilot to a very rigid stage to then being adaptable and then like full on growth, right? And our whole lives we're striving to get on the other side of it. At that point, I was very much operating on autopilot, right? Like not aware, zooming along, trying not to feel or think about anything, just getting stuff done, right? Um, and so I think it was that awareness piece that started to move me out of autopilot and more into that stage of okay, stuff's not right. Things are off. Now what do I do? Right?
Amazing. So, as you were talking, I had this question that, like, a lot of people might have a question how they can be more self aware about themselves. Are there any techniques to find out?
Yeah. The biggest one for me, and what I do have people start with, is we're not doing any change, right? If you recognize, yeah, I'm probably operating on autopilot, like I've been here for a while, um, then the first thing to do is not try to change anything. The first thing to do is just pay attention to recognize, like, am I doing the same thing over and over again? Am I thinking the same thing over and over again? When I get stressed, what's showing up for me? How am I responding? Is it healthy? Right? Or, in relationship, when I have a challenge, what's my default? What do I go to? What's the insecurity that comes up? So, really just paying attention in moments. And one of the biggest things we can do is pay attention to what we're thinking, right? So, there's these stats around, we have roughly 60,000 thoughts a day, and 92-ish% of them are the same thoughts we had the previous day, and about that amount are very negative. And so if we can just catch a few of them throughout the day and try to think something a little bit better, right? I try to tell my clients, try to think of a neutral thought, not like this big woo woo affirmation about yourself, but just something neutral you can believe, right? It gets you out of that spiral of anxiety and fear and whatever's happening, and it puts you in a better headspace to be able to continue. And as we do that, we start to change that narrative in our head. And that helps us to go, oh my gosh, I had no idea I was saying all these nasty things about myself all day long, right?
So it feels like it's about awareness leads to understand the limiting beliefs or any beliefs person has, positive, negative, and working on those beliefs actually helps person to progress. Is that
Hmm.
correct?
Yes. Uh-huh. Yeah.
So I'm just um, I'm just making it simpler for the audience.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with the limiting beliefs, especially the negative one, I was reading a book and I learned that these limiting beliefs get in our DNA from the childhood. What like it's in our DNA from the childhood. It's not something. Yes, there might be some limiting beliefs once we age, but especially before age of 6 or 7 is what I have read. Whatever the child sees, they form the limiting beliefs. And to break them, I have heard a lot. Like I personally do certain things to have done certain things to break those limiting beliefs. But do you have any techniques that you would like to share?
Yeah. It starts with identifying what those are for you. So you're right. We become the person we need to be in the environment we're in when we're a child, right? For better or worse. It doesn't mean you grew up in a horrible home. It just means you identified who you needed to be to fit in, to feel loved, to all the things, right? It is a not great environment, right? So there's a range. And it can be, well, I need to be perfect because that's how I get attention and love, or I need to achieve because that's how I feel worthy and valued, or I need to be the one who helps the family. That's my role. And so then that becomes the belief about yourself, right? Or I need to be in control because this is a chaotic environment, right? Or I need to feel safe and secure and I need to be aware and hyper vigilant. So it does depend on and there are more, but I'm just giving a handful of examples. Once you can understand that, you can understand what we call your core motivation, which is like, let's go down that thread of achievement, right? If you identify that you need to achieve to get recognition and be loved, like it's conditional, I have to achieve, and that's how I get, then as you get older, you view the world as it's filled with winners and losers and I need to be a winner and this is how I'm going to do it. And so the internal beliefs become, I can't fail, I have to constantly be doing, I need to achieve, I'm not good enough if I don't, right? I need to become who these people expect me to be, all of that stuff, right? So it starts with kind of identifying what is the story you're telling yourself about who you have to be in the world and how you need to show up and how you want to be viewed. And then the work becomes, is this true? Is
Wow.
this true? Are there other perspectives I could try? Right? Is this just me, how I view it? Because you and I probably have different perspectives and viewpoints about how we need to show up in the world. But it wouldn't hurt me to try on yours
Yeah.
and you mine, right? So the idea is that we want to start to try on new perspectives to get out of our default ways of thinking and being and recognize that's not the only way. And it's also not true. It's true for me then, but I'm a different person. And this is what holds high achievers back, just individuals in general, because they feel like, well, what got me here, I have to keep doing that thing, right? But the truth is, you've outgrown that young person. You're not in that environment anymore. So you don't have to operate that way anymore.
Yeah. So, talking about the smartest people, I have seen often struggle with the most with stress, burnout, or even having a human connection with someone. So, what's your take on that?
How stress impacts it, or what do you mean?
Like the smartest people, they often struggle. Like they often, I have noticed that they will have more stress, more burnout, or sometimes they even struggle to even have a human connection with someone.
Hmm. Typically, when you see high achieving, smart, intelligent people performing, they're motivated by like that's their thing, right? And if they're not doing that, then what does that mean, right? Does it mean that they are failing, that they're not good enough, right? They're not in control, there's some sort of tie. And so to step away from that and engage in other things that are good for them, healthy, right? Just getting sleep, that feels scary. Because if they stop producing, stop doing, then what does that mean about them? And that's like a huge hurdle to overcome for a lot of people.
I see. So, you also, I was reading somewhere, you also said that understanding oneself can change how you can lead others. And that was an interesting perspective for me. So, what did leadership look for you before, like, you decided to take a charge of yourself and after?
Hmm, that's a great question. Like I said, was operating on autopilot and I always felt like if it wasn't hard, I wasn't doing enough. And if it wasn't hard, I wasn't going to be successful. And so as a leader, I oftentimes would step in and help, like do too much at the expense of my own health, well-being, right? Because I wanted to be in control and I wanted to make sure things got done and I wanted to achieve. And I wasn't a micromanager, but I always stepped in and saved people, right? And didn't allow them to kind of figure it out on their own. Because again, I carried that weight of, well, I need to do all of this stuff and I need to control, and that's the only way to move forward, right? Fast forward, obviously, education, empowering people, all of that stuff is very important. Um, Giving direction, but letting people figure it out after that, right? Removing my own, right? So we get attached to our own stuff and it impacts how we show up and lead, right? So if you have a leader who is, is let's say a perfectionist, then they're going to be very critical and judgmental of the work that's being produced, and they're going to probably micromanage, and they're going to let their fear of not being perfect project onto others, right? Same with any other scenario. If we're not aware of our hangups and the things that keep us stuck, then we're going to bring that onto our teams, bring it into communication, all of that. So it's so important that we learn about ourselves so we can recognize how we're showing up and we can understand who we're with so that we can learn to communicate, support them in a way that is best for them.
Now, talking about the showing up, I have worked with few people, and they can write pretty well. Like, let's say if they want to write a vlog, or sorry, a blog, or they want to send a message. But when it comes to talking with someone, heart to heart connection, especially in the group format, they might feel a little bit of, oh, this is too much. What do you think is the pattern playing in this role? This is a question, actually, just for the context. I run a group, one of the health and wellness group, and one of the lady has asked, and she requested to ask you this question. So I'm bringing it up as it's in the flow.
Okay.
Yeah, but then her question is like, it happens with her very often that showing up herself as authentic as she wants to be, she can write things up pretty nicely. She takes that time and she loves writing the blog. But then when it comes to group and then someone says, oh, share your experience or share something about yourself, she freezes. So, what pattern here is in the play, and how will it help her to get out of this?
Is she feeling anxiety, like a fear sets in? Like, is that what's happening?
I don't think so. It's fear. Whatever I got it from her was it's she freezes completely, like, or she will say out things which she doesn't really want to say it, but then she will hide a few things and will say only the things that are really not so important.
Okay. Is she very intelligent?
Mm, I am not sure.
Don't know.
Yeah.
So a couple of things could be happening. So if there is a fear, not, and I don't mean like scary, but if there is a concern that she doesn't know enough to say it out loud, then she's going to hold tight to whatever she does know. So that happens when, if somebody likes to collect knowledge and information and feels like they need to know enough to be able to share it out loud, that happens, right? And so you freeze up and you're afraid to say anything because what if it's wrong, or what if it's incorrect, or what if I appear like I don't know what I'm talking about? Those types of things come up. And in that case, if this is true for her, I would challenge her to pretend like she has like three tokens in her pocket. And she has to use all three throughout the day in communication, not in her writing, but in communication. So she has to share something in this group format. She needs to, in a team meeting, share something. And so then she can start to prove to herself, like, you do know enough. You do have enough information. People do want to hear from you. You bring value to this group. That could be one thing. The other thing could be if she does struggle with like perfectionism and that type of thing, then that's a different reason to freeze, right? And so if there is a fear of not saying the perfect thing and not appearing, in that way, then of course she's going to freeze up. And so the challenge there is to remind herself something is better than nothing, right? There is no such thing as perfection, right? I bring a lot of value. People want to hear from me. It's just that more of that, like challenging whatever is happening internally. I'm not good enough. Then the neutral thought needs to be something that combats that, right? I'm doing the best I can. I bring a lot of value. Because what it does is our brain is looking for reasons why we're right, right? So whatever it is for her, her brain is going to keep giving her confirmation that she's not good enough or whatever it is for her, right? Until she starts to prove otherwise. And so we have to start to create new narratives about ourselves by doing these things. Just a little bit, small little baby steps, nothing major, right? Testing ourselves, but also really challenging those thoughts so that we don't end up in that freeze place, right? Because what happens is we have a thought that creates a feeling. It could be fear, it could be shame, it could be something else. And then that derails us. And in her case, she freezes up because of that feeling. We want to stop it, right? Cut it off and say, no, not helpful. I'm going to think this thing instead. And then I can move forward.
Very empowering. Thank you so much for sharing that. Hopefully,
Yeah.
it will be helpful for her, and I'll
Yeah.
share what once she tries out what's her
Okay, great. I'd love to hear.
Yeah, thank you so much. Moving to the next section, what's one common piece of advice that drives you nuts and why it doesn't work?
I really Okay, so you mentioned health and wellness. I think that there are a lot of people out there that are capitalizing on health and wellness in really bad ways, um, and trying to sell things that are very expensive so that people feel like they are somehow healthier, better, whatever. And I think the problem is we're in a culture that is full of like quick fixes and everything is instant gratification, this and that, right? And so people are looking for that like quick fix and fall victim to a lot of these promises. And you probably will agree with me, but there's a lot of science behind this where you can't fix what's happening emotionally with something physical. Like those two don't, you have to actually fix the emotional stuff with emotional tools and physical stuff with physical tools. And I think there's this misconception because people are profiting off of it that, if you get in a cold plunge, your whole life is going to be fixed, right? Like those types of things really, really irk me because it's not right. It's not right. They're false promises. And yeah, that I'm, I have a hard time with that.
I see. Yeah, I completely agree with that. So, you, of course, help people to go from autopilot to awareness. For someone just starting, let's say,
Mhm.
what would be the first real step look like?
So, like we talked about, the first kind of step is doing nothing other than paying attention, right? And that could be you keep a awareness journal and you start to just notice things about yourself, right? Like we talked about, when I get stressed, this is what happens, right? So for me, I'll give an example. When I get stressed, I shut down. I don't want to talk to anybody. I close off. I completely block out people and I get quiet. Not healthy, not helpful, right? Especially if I'm in a relationship and my partner wants to know what's going on with me. It's not fair. So that's how I show up. And I have to work on being vulnerable because that's a scary thing for me. Being vulnerable, talking about what's going on, not being afraid to appear, you know, well, vulnerable, right? Or in like a negative term that I would carry when I was not as self aware, which was weak. Like I didn't want to appear weak. Um, so paying attention to interactions with people, right? In relationship and friendship with colleagues. what's showing up? How am I showing up? Is there conflict? Am I reactive? Like just noticing, do I have a default pattern? Like people pleasers tend to not be able to set up boundaries and say yes to everything, right? Noticing, is that my pattern? Am I doing that because I want to be accepted and liked and I don't want to disappoint? So that's where that beginning stuff starts, is just noticing, keeping some sort of journal or paying attention to the thoughts you're having and starting there.
Yeah, powerful technique.
Mhm.
So, all the things you have shared, they are absolutely not about perfection. They are about giving permission to oneself to be aware of oneself. I think it's safe to say that.
Yeah,
What's the permission you gave yourself that changed everything?
probably 2 things. I didn't feel, like, worthy of good stuff, so I ended up in a really toxic relationship. I wasn't taking care of myself, right? Um had a really horrible relationship with my body, all the things, and so I was basically punishing myself, and in doing so, I was doubling down on control, right? Like I said, everything had to be hard. I needed to push myself. I couldn't appear weak, and so those were the things that were holding me back, right? Blocking me from healthy relationship, from good friendships, from growth, because I was so stuck in that.
Wow. Is there anything I have missed right now and you would like to share with our audience that would be helpful?
I think, along the vein of, we kind of talked a little bit about anxiety and achievement. And I I think one, it's recognizing what that hidden cost is, right? If we are pushing ourselves and we're not taking care of ourselves, which it sounds like you spend time in the space talking about, there are a lot of hidden costs that impact us, not only how we feel, but how we show up, how we, perform, all of these things. And I think the other thing that I would say is you can achieve, you can be successful and also be healthy and, and do this work so that you feel um, more content and more satisfied and those things that are really important to us, right? um, Anxiety tends to push us from behind, whereas ambition and drive and things like that that are healthy and aligned, they pull us forward with good energy, right? And so if you're noticing that you're being pushed and it feels urgent and overwhelming and all of those things, then it's time to kind of sit with that and really notice, like, why am I, doing this to myself? And what can I really start to focus on to create some change?
Yeah, that was a powerful statement. And one of the things that you said, that high achievers, or even I work in a corporate as well. I work as a cybersecurity in the
Mhm.
cybersecurity area, and that's a misconception that while you work over there, you cannot take care of yourself at the same
Mhm.
time because of the kind of work you do and the kind of expectations people have. It's kind of a people pleasing thing. I believe that happens a lot, and the message you shared is very powerful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much about that.
Yeah. It's important, right? We all have goals and we want to get to certain places professionally and personally, but we have to be well. We have to be emotionally stable and we have to be physically healthy. And those things don't happen long term if we don't. So it's important.
I honestly enjoyed our conversation. There were so many great things you shared. I'm sure the audience is going to love it, and they're going to implement that, and we are going to see the positive changes. I'm very positive about that. So I'm truly grateful for everything you have shared, and thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.